Danville, Boyle County Planning and Zoning Commission to order. And we'll start with an invocation, if you join me in prayer. Dear God, thank you for all the blessings you've given our community. Be with our first responders, policemen, and firemen as they seek to help us when we're in need. And help us to make good decisions today for our community. Amen.
Amen.
Do we have any questions or comments about the minutes from November? Okay, do we have
Now, I'll move to accept the minutes.
Okay, do we have a second? All right. All in favor?
And Mr. Chair, I'll just make my request that commissioners be attentive to the microphone button when we're speaking today.
Yeah, just make sure the green light's on there.
Push your button, Jim. No?
No, our buttons are out.
Okay.
Yeah, my button was out too.
Okay, you should say, sound clear. Can you hear us? Yeah.
Okay. Next thing on our agenda is the financial report for November.
Yeah, if everybody would turn to the financial report, well, it's gonna sound a lot like the prior couple of months, quite frankly. You go down to the middle of the page where it says total commission revenue. You can see our year-to-date through November revenue is a little over 121,000. That's at 55% of budget. This is the 5th month of our fiscal year, so if we were exactly on plan, it would be 42% of budget. So our year-to-date income is above budget, due, again, primarily to the construction review fees that were received earlier in the year. And for expenses, if you go to actually the top of the 3rd page is total expenditures. And you'll see that our total expenditures for the first 5 months of the fiscal year are a little over $90,000, which is about 40% of our budgeted expenditures, so a couple percent below where our expenses would be if we were right on budgeted expense plan. So again, similar to the previous several months, we're over on income and below budget on expenditures. Anything you want to add, Michaela? I didn't see anything unusual from an expense or income standpoint.
Nope,
Okay.
nothing to add.
Is there anything out in expenses that we're waiting on? Yeah, that's the difference.
Well, I don't know if we're still waiting for the second quarter payment from Danville. That would be an income that we're waiting on.
That has come in, it will reflect on the next month's
Okay.
statement. But, yeah, no major expenses. There are some costs associated with the, oh my gosh, public meetings for the comprehensive plan that I don't believe are reflected in this month, so it will probably show up in next month, but otherwise, no, it's pretty typical expenses.
Did we put those in the forecast? We did, didn't we? We knew that something would occur.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so
we did.
it's in the plan numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the finance report.
We have a second?
So-
Second, okay, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is the construction sureties.
I don't have any updates for this.
Okay. Moving along, do you have any subdivision approval?
We did not receive any major subdivision applications for this month, so.
Okay. And I understand the first 3 public hearings are wish to remain tabled.
That's correct. Center College for Louise Street has asked to table again. And I am asking to stay tabled for the minimum lot size in the ag zoning district amendment to the joint zoning ordinance. Gonna hope to bring that in January. I just don't recall, I know for center we tabled indefinitely. I don't recall if we tabled indefinitely for the zoning ordinance amendment. Do you, Henry?
I don't, I was just scanning the minutes for that. If we could just have a motion to table that matter until Next-
January,
okay.
yeah.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you, motion's unanimous. So we have one public hearing to have this morning then, and we'll move to the public hearing portion of our meeting and out of the regular planning and zoning meeting. And I'll let you describe it, Kaylee.
Yep. Properties LLC has applied for a zoning map amendment on 0.389 acres at 540 Adams Street, Danville, from single-family residential R1A to multifamily residential RM3. So this is the property here. It's at the very end of Adams Street. So Adams Street here, again, the property is zoned R1A. It's kind of surrounded by R1A on the end of Adams Street. We've got some RM2, so some two-family residential here, and then this is RM3 here, multifamily residential where the apartments or townhomes are. This is a view of the future land use map, our current future land use map. So this is the property here. It is shown as moderate density residential, which would be in line with what they're proposing here for the RM3 zoning district. Kind of surrounding it is primarily single-family residential, some commercial to the south. Two-family residential is the dashed line here. You've also got some more moderate density residential to the north where the existing RM3 zoning is. I did put some goals and objectives on here, so when we're going through a zoning map amendment, we're looking to see if it's in agreement with the comprehensive plan, so you can see that it is in agreement with the flume. That's why we're not looking at a flume amendment today. So a few of the goals and objectives I thought were applicable to this application. Goal to provide an adequate supply of decent, safe, and sanitary housing for citizens of all income levels. Objectives encourage rehabilitation of substandard housing through redevelopment projects and adoption of housing maintenance codes. Goal 1, to provide adequate land at appropriate locations for all land uses while minimizing the adverse impacts of developments by utilizing the flume to guide daily decision-making regarding land uses and development proposals. Objectives: make efficient use of existing utility systems, promoting restoration, redevelopment, and infill development, and discouraging strip development. Respect the character of existing neighborhoods by encouraging that new development and redevelopment will conform to the existing context as determined by the scale and massing of existing buildings. To give you a summation of, what's existed on this property, it was previously a fiveplex. That's my understanding that historically this is what this property has functioned as. And then it was abandoned, so it lost its non-conforming status. If it hadn't been abandoned for a period of greater than 12 months, it would be considered non-conforming. So their proposal of a fourplex or a multifamily unit within there would be considered grandfathered and it could continue, but because it was abandoned, that's why they're here for the zone change. There is an existing structure there. An existing structure there and an existing parking area. The parking area probably needs a little bit of attention to it. It's kind of overgrown a little bit at this point, but you could see that it was historically there. With this drive coming off.
Was the building footprint size any larger or changed?
No,
Same.
they are not
Okay.
proposing to change the footprint at all. It's actually one of their conditions that they will not expand the footprint. And they actually are reducing the number of units from a fiveplex to a fourplex in this proposal.
On a previous slide, you're wanting to go to an RM3. In that section of Adams Street, is there any other RM3?
No, it's all zoned R1A on this portion of Adams Street. Again, to the north here, there is some RM3, but that's off Savannah Way. So it's not directly adjoining, and again, there is some RM2 once you get closer to the intersection there. I'm sorry, I can't recall what street this is off the top of my head, and I can't read it. What's that? Alta, thank you.
Alta.
Gosh. Yeah, on Alta Avenue there, so there's some RM2, but primarily when you drive down that street, it's single family.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Michaela, we're looking at we're just in an interesting time period right now where we're using our existing future land use map.
Right.
And we're getting ready to propose a new future land use map. Is this going to be in accordance with the proposed?
I don't recall if I made this area village neighborhood or garden neighborhood.
But either way, that would be, if it was, oh, yeah, okay, I see.
Yep, if it was garden neighborhood, it wouldn't be
It
in
won't be in compliance.
compliance, yep. But we have to,
I know, we have to look at
function-
it as
yep,
according to today.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, that was the question I was going to have. The land use map that you showed us, the next slide is
Yep.
the 2018.
Yep, this is the 2018 flume. Again,
Okay.
our 2018 flume, it tends to reflect more existing land
Right.
uses. That's just the nature of it. I think that's why you're seeing, my guess is these dashed ones are more duplexes, and all the yellow that you see is more single-family residential. This area to the south, it's shown as commercial in the flume. It's zoned R1A. It's really more of a farm. It's a bigger property. I think it's an Old Crow Inn or something. Yeah, yep, so. Yeah, I had, there were a few questions that came up, and I'm sure Brendan's gonna talk about this a bit as well, but, one of the concerns that came up in tech review, and, the attorneys have been talking about, so I might let them talk about this more than me, but, the boundary survey indicated that a 15-foot platted alley is located on the rear of the property. If this alley is considered public right-of-way, it will impact the parking layout, setbacks on the rear of the lots, et cetera. It will also impact what we should actually describe for the legal description with our zoning map amendment. So this is the platted 15-foot alley here. It's been abandoned. You don't really see the remnants of it, but it is platted. Henry's conclusion is that we should only rezone to halfway through the alley, only consider for rezoning halfway through the alley. So instead of that full 15 feet, we would go up to 7.5 feet. Is that correct, Henry? Do you want to add anything to this?
Because of case law that says that landowners own to the center line of abutting right-of-way. That's the reason for drawing it to the middle of that alley. You know, we don't have anything conclusive on ownership of the alley. I think Brenda might speak to this. It looked to me like the city would have to both adopt it into its street system and then abandon it subsequently. But for the purposes of this zone change, the pressing issue was, can you hear it today? Yes, you can. And we're going to draw that line at the center line of the alley.
And that
So-
alley continues on the plat through the other properties, the adjoining properties?
It does, it's the old plat,
Yeah,
right?
It's the whole plat,
Yeah,
yep.
okay.
Yep.
So you'd end up with two zones on this particular plat?
That's correct, but the zone that would be in the remainder, the southern half of that alley matches the zone of the southerly parcel, and it's a contiguous zone. You're not leaving, you know,
Okay, just, it's,
a
yeah.
spot or a
It's
strip.
not dangling or, yeah,
Right.
that's what, something, whatever the right term. I didn't want it dangle out there. We need to make sure it's defined.
Exactly.
Okay, do we have anybody that wishes to speak?
Well, there's a second concern, wasn't there then?
There was, yeah.
One more, yeah.
So the proposed layout for the parking is not meeting the requirements of the zoning ordinance. If a drive aisle is less than 20 feet in width, then 2 one-way drives are required, otherwise a variance is required. This isn't something necessarily for the zone change, but I just wanted to comment on it and make you all aware, because there was, a conceptual plan or basically existing conditions submitted as part of this. So obviously with the alley issue, that's gonna change the layout of the parking, as well as whether or not they decide to apply for a variance on this, or if they decide to rework it altogether. So I just wanted to comment on, the way that this is shown here, it's not able to be approved as shown for a zoning permit purpose. Once, say the zone change is approved, and then they do decide to convert it to that fourplex, they would have to get a zoning permit through us for a change of use. and that's what we would look
So
at.
you're not only talking about the bottom where the outplatted alley area, but up at the very top, the driveway?
Yeah, so up
Intersects an odd
here,
intersection there.
and we didn't get a measurement on it. I did stick my car in there, and it was about as wide as my car. So my guess is it's about 8 feet,
Yeah, that's,
something like that, 7, 8 feet wide at the very top there. And it's, again, it's supposed to be 20 feet wide, so it's not meeting our minimum requirements.
Okay.
It would need to have a second entrance if it remained that width, so. Or
And that alley
apply for
runs
variance.
across the back of all those, how far does that alley run across on all those properties?
Brandon, do you recall?
Yeah, well, the.
Introduce yourself.
Again, I'm Brendan Shevlin. I represent M Hawk Properties, the applicant. The plat dates back to 1908 and is hand-drawn and in the deed book, and then a copy of that has now been made microfiche, and I believe it's 5A or 5B to give you some idea of how far it dates back in the slide book. I don't know if the alley ever existed. It does not appear to have any remnant left if you look at Google Earth aerial. And I think if we have that other image, I don't know if we can rotate back to, yeah, on the one on the right.
I've got it pulled up right here and there's nothing.
Yeah.
I'm looking
Yeah.
at it on
It's
the.
a tree line, it appears to be now, and then all the properties have kind of absorbed it over time. I don't think you'd have any idea there was an alley or supposed to be an alley there.
Yeah.
And the southern neighbor, I think, is only concerned about whether you're exceeding their property line, not what is platted as an alley. So it's kind of, it's on the map. The surveyor was right to note it, I think, but it doesn't really exist in any sort of usable form, and I don't think has for decades, looking at it, on that issue. I don't know if I should address everything. I think it's been covered pretty well. We're, M Hawk Properties LLC is seeking zoning map amendment from R1A to RM3. The structure on the property is traditionally a fiveplex. That was what it was built for. That's what its intended use was. But for it falling into disrepair and disuse, it would have had no problem being grandfathered in as an existing structure and existing use. There will be, and we've made this a condition, no changes to the footprint of the property. It won't be expanded. It was originally a fiveplex. It's being renovated as a fourplex, so it would be less dense than how it's been traditionally used. I don't have it as a slide or anything, but the application shows the work that's been done the before and after
It
as
is
to.
up on this.
Oh, okay. You can, on the left is the before picture, before M Hawk Properties got involved with renovation, and on the right is what it looks like now after the renovations have occurred. So it might be a stretch to call it a blighted property, but on the before, but it was in disrepair and disuse, and I think without changing footprints or anything in the neighborhood, having a usable structure and some much, I think, from what I hear from other clients, a much needed apartment space and availability in the area would be a much more efficient use of the property than just leaving it there or trying to turn it into something it really was never intended to be, a single-family residence. It does match the current future land use map, so there wouldn't be any issue with compliance or change there. And I certainly think it meets the redevelopment and restoration objectives that are goals for these kind of applications and amendments.
I don't recall, but did they have parking beyond, earlier, was there parking behind the house in that area?
The-
Or
there was-
parking lot?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The parking lot that's platted was the existing parking lot. I don't know currently that much, if any adjustments have been made to the parking lot there. And we're here today, of course, speaking primarily about the zoning map amendment. we are prepared to, as far as the parking lot, we are prepared to make adjustments to the, as needed, be it via landscaping or developing it or create, there's, if you see on the left of the property there, that is essentially, these are two lots that have been combined over the years. So there is not much of anything on the other side of the building, the left side of the building as we look at it here. So if there needed to be additional driveway space or an alternate driveway on that left side of the building, that would be possible. We've also discussed the possibility they might seek a variance. This property being at the end of a dead end kind of reduces some of the traffic concerns you might have if it was in the middle of a busy street. So that smaller access point might not be as problematic because it's right next to a dead end fence, I think, down there.
I know that some of our safety and ambulance and fire trucks are quite big. If they had to get in the backyard, that would be a difficult task.
Well, and they're, like I say, they're certainly prepared to address those issues and concerns, but that, I don't know, is pertinent to what we're seeking today.
Yeah, no, the fire marshal is aware of this application, and they would have to go through all inspections and meet all codes for that. If it goes to a multifamily, they'd have to pull proper building permits, get inspections, everything. So it wouldn't circumvent any and all codes that are applicable for that.
And you've answered my question. I wanted to make sure what we're addressing today, that is an item that needs to be addressed, but it's not. You've listed it as a staff concern on the alley side, so we're going to make sure.
Yeah, like I said, I just listed it because we had kind of an existing / conceptual plan, and I just wanted to make everyone aware that it
Sure.
couldn't remain as shown.
So it's not in consideration for us today, but it would have to be handled some other time? Is that how?
That's correct, yeah. Through the zoning permit process, it would be an administrative review, but I would have to look and approve the parking area and landscaping, and if they're not meeting our requirements, they'd have to go to the Board of Adjustment to get a
Okay.
variance.
That's really what I brought it up for, is just clarify that, yes, it's an item that needs to be captured, but it's not, as you said, it's not the part that we need to talk about today in the front and get the review.
On the alley at the southern, the bottom of the property, southern part, the bottom part of the property, I don't know that it affects what we're trying to do today. I've got a somewhat recent case I've discovered after Mr. Smith was kind enough to give me his take in a case that he thought was relevant to how this would work. It may be that there's a case that came before the Kentucky Court of Appeals in 2021 in which a similar situation had occurred in a neighborhood with a platted street that basically never came to be, and a few citizens that lived there had created a private driveway along part of what had been that footprint. And then someone else further down decided they wanted to kind of bulldoze, similar to here where it had been decades since anyone had thought of this as a street. And then someone said, well, it's on the plat, so now I'm going to put a boulevard through all this stuff. So I think there may be legal grounds for us to say that this has been abandoned by decades of non-use and essentially non-existence of the alley in any real sense or any dedicated sense. The if memory serves, the 1908 plat is just kind of hand-drawn and identifies the surveyor and how it was done. I think that pre-existed planning and zoning and approvals and that sort of thing. So it's just kind of an old hand-drawn, probably with rulers at least, because they're very straight lines, but a hand-drawn map, and then they put it in the books and worked off of it. So I don't want to hold up my folks have renovated this. They're doing it as a business. I want to get the process moving for them, so I don't want to get too tied up over 7.5 feet. There may be, I don't know if we might be able to table what could happen to that bottom strip of 7.5 feet, but they're not planning to put they're not planning to put a fourplex in that 7.5 feet, so it's largely semantics. So I'd certainly like to get at least up to what we're in agreement on, that's suitable for rezoning.
No dispute on that matter.
What can we discuss and do today prior to finding out about emergency access to that? I mean, is that something that we can do today, or do we have to wait to find out if an ambulance needs that access to get into the back, like for access to one of the units?
I don't think the zone change has to wait on that. Again, if they get approved, if the zone change gets approved and then they go and pull a building permit for a multifamily dwelling, they would have to go through that whole process of the building permit, which would include fire inspections, and they would have to meet all codes. If they can't meet those codes, then they wouldn't be able to function as a multifamily unit. So it's not necessarily under planning commission's purview. If they were proposing a new structure or anything like that, that might be a different conversation, but, that's my view of it. I don't know if Henry feels differently, but.
Is there something further than that that you would want to
Well,
address?
the reason I'm asking is because we have to look at it as if it hasn't been there, because it hasn't been grandfathered.
Right.
This is correct? Okay? Because it's not grandfathered now, we're looking at it as if it's a new entity. Would we approve a new entity in, I'm being, you guys know how I think hypothetically, right? This building now, it didn't exist before, okay? And because we've lost its grandfatherhood status. What would we do if somebody was proposing a fiveplex in this place? That's what I think that we have to consider right now.
Well, they're proposing a fourplex.
Sorry,
not a
fourplex,
fiveplex.
sorry. What would we
And
do if
there's-
somebody
so
was?
there's
Going
plenty of-
down in the number of residents, and you're gonna have more room in the parking than you used to have.
Well, there's also plenty of room on this side to put in a much wider driveway if that's what's required.
That's exactly the kind of thing that I'm asking, is like, what can we talk about now with this? I'm not saying I don't want to do it, I'm just asking.
Yeah, it's complicated because that's really more of a zoning permit site
I
plan
guess what I'm getting at is,
question
would,
than-
if we approve this RM3, and it turns out that they can't do it,
Then they could remain as single family.
right, then they could remain as single family, but would we have done the RM3? You following me? Like, would we have done this RM3 if we didn't think that they could do it? And then the zone change is the zone change.
Yeah.
Are we doing a zone change for a single place that are you following? Like, would we make the zone change for a single place that's going to remain changed in the zone if that place can't be built?
I understand what you're saying, Tom, but it's also this existing structure that was a fiveplex. And I understand it's not grandfathered, but at the same time, it's sitting there.
That I know, and we have a new,
And
we have a new flume that's that
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
coming in that
but-
may make it exactly what we desire,
Right.
okay? What I'm concerned about is the process precedent that we do a zone change for a place that, I don't think this is gonna be an issue, but it might be. I just don't wanna, again, I don't wanna put us into a process, your words, Ken, last time were really, really good, where we create our own inertia in something.
Excuse me, council, my name is Thomas Owen, I live on this property, I'm at a very dead end. When you get done, I've got something to say about this property.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we'll,
Sure.
you'll have
get your
opportunity.
chance, I promise. Okay, I don't think we're gonna be able to answer that today. Can we move on? Do you have anything else to add?
No, I think, as far as what we're trying to do today, I think I've covered our position.
And Mr. Smith, Henry, did you have any other comments?
In response to Tom's question about what we can and cannot discuss, I think these are things that we can discuss, but if we don't yet have drawings, alternative plans, fire marshal here to address them. There's a limit to which they should inform our decision.
Thank you, Henry.
And we certainly, I should stress, one thing I should add is that my client's fully prepared to try and meet all those types of requirements, but this is kind of the initial step they need to accomplish before they make that investment. Hate to, asphalt's, everything's not cheap anymore, but asphalt's not cheap to come and put in an elaborate driveway and then find out you can't use it as a
Yeah.
fourplex would be an
You
inefficient
wanna
way
do
to
it once.
try and develop it as a business.
So all in?
That's all I have.
Do we have anybody else that wishes to speak in favor of the zone change? Okay, I'll ask again, anybody else in favor of the zone change? All right, then do we have somebody that wishes to speak in opposition to the zone change? All right. Start with your name and address, please.
Okay. I am Lauren Flowers. I'm the owner of 535 Adams Street. I would like to speak in opposition to this project, and I think I decided to go first because the previous speaker, his description of the property as blighted, the property was condemned in 2023. I purchased 535 Adams Street in 2021. 540 set vacant. I can tell from Zillow it was purchased in 2022, so it sat vacant for another year. It was condemned. Any construction on the property to remedy the condemnation did not start until 2024 of this year. To address Mr. Ruby's comment that would it be like creating a new project on this lot, it absolutely would be. 540 was open to the elements, portions of the house wide open. From the Zillow pictures, you can tell that it was in complete disrepair. So it would be a completely new construction project. I took the angle of looking at RM3 zoning in Danville, Boyle County. And from what I found from our GIS map is that RM3 is not a very common zoning, especially in residential neighborhoods on residential streets. We have RM3 condos, so the ones behind my house at 535, but those are developed as essentially single-family townhomes on that property. You have other condos like the ones on Waveland Avenue and the ones behind the Social Security office. Those all have dedicated parking. They're on open streets with nice access, and they're constructed to be multifamily environments. Other RM3s, of course, are the apartment complexes in town, designed to be multifamily units with access and parking. You had Colonial Way and the Country Club. I'm not quite sure why those were RM3, but they are. Bruce Court is an assisted living facility. And then you have East Broadway between First Street and Wilderness Trail. Those are your chopped up older homes that have been converted into multifamily housing. And I believe that's where a lot of our underhoused individuals in the city live. And those people struggle with things like paying utility bills because those houses are not meant to be housing for 4 and 5 families. So they struggle with their heating, their cooling, just life in general in that way. So basically, I couldn't find any other evidence of a residential street that is single-family homes and or duplexes having an RM3 zoned property stuck right in the middle of it. And to address the access to the end of Adams Street, it's an extremely tight dead-end street. You have street parking on one side, so in front of my house, all the way to the end, to the last property. And then 540 sits in a corner. We drive a regular pickup truck. It takes a multi-point turn to back into their 8-foot wide driveway and to maneuver to turn back around to go down the street. If there are vehicles parked on the other side, you'd have to have a fire truck back down the road. Our garbage trucks back down Adams Street to collect trash. I believe probably my neighbors will speak on other issues. My other concerns include infrastructure, plumbing, sewer lines in that old of a neighborhood constructed in early 1900s, and safety access and parking. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed zone change?
Morning. My name is Thomas Owen. I live at 543 Adams Street. I'm at the very dead end of this street. For over 22, 23 years, this place that we're talking about had been abandoned. There has been nobody there. I have seen 4 or 5 foot of water in this thing for years under the bottom. The roof has been off of it. There has been no concern whatsoever with anybody buying or renting of this place until the young lady had spoken in 2022. I think it sold. They found out it was riddled with asbestos. Didn't want to take the time to have it abated right. So it got sold to somebody else. That kind of undermined it and went in there and had a crew of probably 30 guys that went in there and tore the whole thing out in like 2 or 3 days. And they didn't have any permits to do this. My wife has COPD, stage 4. She got very ill from the asbestos in the area. So did several people because it wasn't abated right. As far as I'm concerned, Hawk Enterprises did an injustice to the neighborhood. It is a very tight area down through there. We have a lot of kids that come down to the very dead end where I live to play basketball. They feel safe down there because it's a dead-end street. It's a real tight street. And being a fiveplex 30 years ago may have been okay for Danville, but as a residential neighborhood, there's single families all around there. I think it would be an injustice to let this go through. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Daz Flowers, yet again my wife, and I own 535 Adams Street. Can we go to the picture of the front of the house, please, how it currently sits? This perspective of the home is exceptionally misleading. This lipstick on a pig that they have done, they do not show you that the busted basement windows on the left side are still currently open to the elements for the building. The right side has chipboard over the basement windows. There is a rafter above that middle window on the top floor that was not sided like the rest of the house and has particle board slapped over the top of it currently. It is still in disrepair. It should still be condemned. It's still a safety hazard to the children that play on this street. That is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir, go ahead.
My name's Parr. I live at 533 Adams Street. I can't hear very good, and I got one lung gone and one full of COPD. And I had to breathe this stuff all the time they were in the process of gutting that house with all the asbestos in it. The pipes and the ductwork were covered with taped up asbestos. I know. I've built houses all my life. And it was just a dump. All it was a drug haven. And that's exactly what's going to happen again whenever somebody's moved in there. If you put 4 families in there, you're going to have on an average of 7 to 8 cars per building, and then all their friends coming down on Saturday night. You're not going to be able to park on your own street. You won't be able to drive on your own street because they park in your yards when they come down through there. And this place does not need something like that. I mean, I'm living where I live right now, 23 years. Tom Broach up here hated to see me come in because I was up there every week griping about trash thrown down. Fix this and fix that. The man got to where he wanted to lock the door so he wouldn't have to listen to me because I want to take pride in the street where I live. I don't want to live in a dump. If I did, I would have moved by a dump. But the house has been sitting empty for 22 years before it was touched. And so that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Bruce Finley. I live on 525 Adams Street. I've lived there going on 30 years. I've seen that neighborhood go through a lot of changes. And the only bad thing that I seen on our street was that. It's been a meth haven. They cook meth in it, and a lot of times we couldn't get nobody to do anything about it, so we ended up having to do it ourselves because they didn't want to deal with it. And as far as I'm concerned, the only reason that we're up here today is over money. And they don't give a shit about anybody that's living on that street. Our kids, our grandkids, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about this. And everybody in the neighborhood knows it. Because we're all friends, we all get along with each other. It's a very tight neighborhood. So when we see stuff like, we know what that looked like. It was a lake underneath of it for years. And then when they drained it out, they tried to clean out the sewer, and it stopped everybody's toilets up, drains everything up on the whole street because of that. And it's because the inside of it, there's no way that anybody could be safe in that place. And the only reason they didn't do anything with it for so long is because nobody could afford to get the asbestos out of it. That was because it had to been, the whole house had something over it to keep the asbestos to getting out in the neighborhood. That's the reason it sat there for as long as it did. Nobody wanted to do that. And now that they've removed the asbestos with nobody down there trying to sneak it out of there, and they did, we all seen it. And now that they think they're asbestos free, we're trying to do this. And it'll hurt our community a lot. And I've been in that neighborhood a long time. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wish to speak in opposition? Let's start with your name and.
My name is Chris Royalty. I live at 536 Adams Street. I am directly next door to this property. It's been abandoned since I purchased my home. I've been there about 12 years. The current owner, Marcus, I think he's back here. He's actually been very nice and helpful with me. And my concern is really not with him. Eventually, he will sell the property. And then what's going to happen with it? You know, is it going to get back to the state that it was before, right before it became abandoned? It's traditionally been kind of a slum. Since I've been living there, you know, I've run people out of it multiple times. I keep people away from it. You know, I kind of watch out for it because it's right next door to my house. I don't want anything going on over there. You know, my proposal would be to even consider an RM2 because RM2 we do have on the street and generally we don't have any problems. But with the density of 4 families living there, that's, you know, I think somebody else mentioned the traffic. We're going to have 8 more cars. We only have street parking on one side of the street, and it's pretty much full all the time as it is now. You know, are the sewer systems on our street equipped to handle 4 more families? That's really my only concern. It's just been a headache since it's been there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else that wishes to speak in opposition to the zone change? No, open it one more time. Does anybody else wish to speak in favor of it? Let him go first, please, and then you can have the last spot.
My name's Elliot Cannon. I don't live on Adams Street. I own Cannon Construction and Rental. I've been doing a lot of the work that was done here on Adams Street. To go back to somebody saying we had 30 people, there was maybe 4 people there at one time to do the work at this property. We've taken this property from an old man that was, I think, 75 years old. He always wanted to fix it. He always wanted to help the community and have people live there. He didn't have the means to do it. And that's whenever he brought it to the market. And whenever it came to the market, that's whenever Impact Properties bought it. So whenever that happened, I got hired on to start looking at remodeling this place. I'm the one who's done all the work to this place. We've spent a lot of money on this place already. And we are ready to develop the right side of this house. If you're looking at the property, the right side, where there's a strip of property that we own, Marcus owns on the right side, we're able to develop it to a driveway and make more parking in the back. There's not gonna be any problem with any ambulance or fire truck being able to get back there. I know that this is a narrow street. I know a lot of streets on Danville are narrow, but this street could be prevented on that side in front of that property there. There's no parking. So all the parking has to be in the back. To address the 8 foot, I think it's gonna be like 12 foot that we actually have on the left side of the house. So a car can, I've had big trucks down through there with trailers. You can get down through there right now, but I do agree that we could make another driveway to get compliant with the zoning or the committee or however we have to do it on the right side of the property. I had this place tested for asbestos. I don't know who got that or how they got that, but I had it tested by a professional in Lexington, and he found no signs of asbestos. So if you guys want to wipe that right off the board, you can. So there's two sides to every story, and to be able to say that we've not taken this property from a rundown shack that everybody seems to be mad about to something that will actually help and develop this community, it's a shame. So I'm able to tell you that we're going to take it all the way up to code and take it all the way up to building code and building permit. It's going to have everything just like it should. So, thank you.
Thank you.
You wish to speak, sir?
Yes, certainly I understand citizens in the community being concerned about what's happening on their street. We're here today just on zoning change, building and who's inside. It's not a certificate of occupancy. It's not a building permit. It's not even a zoning permit. It's just a change to a building that existed as a fiveplex can now exist as a fourplex and trying to do it the right way. Whatever, if it used to support 5 families, I assume the infrastructure is sufficient to support less than that. As far as access and emergency access and the driveways, that's all stuff we're prepared to address at the time that it's appropriate. And I don't think this is that time. So a lot of the objections raised are more to both what this has been, which I would submit a completed and occupied and renovated structure would be the lesser of two evils, so to speak, over an unoccupied, dilapidated structure without any controls other than community watch, it sounds like, or neighborhood watch as to what's going on there, who's in there, who's coming through, who's passing through, what they're using it for. That this would be an improvement, even if everyone would prefer it just be vacant. It is private property. It's not a park or anything that's being hijacked. It is something that has been there and has been operated at a higher density than we're proposing to operate it. And so I don't want to dismiss neighborhood concerns, but the concerns raised are not really about what we're here today. It's more about, and nobody's, as far as construction in the building, nobody's asking them to live there. And those are things residents would, eventual residents be concerned with, and also things for building permit and those kind of things. If it's not renovated properly, presumably they won't get whatever authorization they need for a certificate of occupancy or a building permit. So I just wanted to not dismiss concerns, but try and kind of focus us on the concerns that are relevant to today's application.
Sir, how many years has it been since anybody occupied that home legally?
That I'm not sure on. It's only.
Because I've heard that it's been empty for 12 years. I've heard that it's been empty for 20 years. I'm just wondering.
My clients have only owned it, I think, since 2022. So, I mean, they certainly can't speak to history beyond that, probably. It may have been, I don't, based on the pictures, I have no reason to believe it hadn't been vacant for some time.
So the issue of abandonment is not as, so the issue that it's only been abandoned for a year is less important to me now than the fact that it hasn't been occupied.
No, it sounds like it's been
In a
not,
really, really long time.
not
So-
occupied for more than 20 years, and it's been an eyesore in the neighborhood. And that's,
Yeah, so that to me is a lot more important. That would be like proposing a new, you know, a new place.
Thank you.
I heard this gentleman say that he had it tested.
Get up to the mic first.
The gentleman said that he had it tested for asbestos. This is a lot about what everybody's worried about, among the other things. But he says there's none in there. Well, it was in there for 20, I've been there almost 30 years. It's been there for 30 years. Who come and got it? That's what I want to know. Who come and got all that asbestos out of that house? Because you'd have to have professionals to do it. And if they did do that, they should be able to prove it, that they removed it.
That would all take account during the occupancy.
Well, when these guys
Inspections.
bought it, suddenly all the asbestos disappeared. It was no longer there. Well, I think everybody in the neighborhood wants to know, well, who come and got it?
Have anybody else that wishes to speak for or against? Okay, thank you. Henry, do we have our discussion as part of the public hearing and then move back to the meeting, or do we have our discussion as part of the meeting?
Mr. Chair, it's been our practice to close the public hearing, so discussion would follow that.
Okay, then, with a lack of anybody else wishing to speak and everybody having had their chance to speak, I'll close the public hearing and we'll move to any discussion we may have about the public hearing.
go ahead, Ken.
Anybody?
I want to thank this group for presenting the history and discussions. It's very valuable to do.
Yeah, one of the things I'm concerned with is the plat that is at the rear of 540 and runs behind all the other buildings on the even side of the street. If we make that adjustment for the 7.5 feet, how will that affect the other properties that also abut that plat on the back of the property? And what will we be deciding if we do in fact do that?
Mr. Alexander, I don't think that we're necessarily making any decision about ownership or assigning any new rights here so much as looking what's on the plat and applying existing law to it. So we're not changing anything about the size of the lot and definitely not affecting the rights of neighbors in that regard.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Any further discussion?
Tom raises a good point, and we have to think about how we proceed, given that. I think the neighbors all have valid issues, having lived for 10, 20 years with an abandoned property, and something that's not in good shape. If I were in that neighborhood, I think I'd look to see how could we renovate that property, or could it be brought back up and made useful again? It seems to me difficult to think about, all right, somewhere in the distant past, that was a 5-plex somehow. I don't know how that worked.
See, I'm not sure that, nobody questions that it was a functioning 5-plex at some point in time in the distant past. The question is, would we today approve a new 4-plex at the end of that street? Forgetting that anything about what this building looks like today and what it was in the past. if somebody brought today a proposal to build a fourplex on the end of that street, because obviously, they're not gonna get occupancy permit if it's not, you know, if it's got asbestos in it today, it's not gonna get an occupancy permit, right? If it overwhelms the sewer, it's not gonna get an occupancy permit, right?
Right.
All of them.
All of those we are not dealing with.
We're not dealing with. We're asking the question, if today they were building a brand-new fourplex, somebody was proposing a brand-new fourplex to us, would we give
Would
approval
we
for?
change the zone?
Right,
from
would
a
we give
fiveplex to a
would we give
fourplex?
approval to zone change?
And regardless of the structure on there.
Correct.
We're zoning the property, not the.
That's correct.
building.
That's why I'm asking about doing our own inertia. Would
Right.
we approve an RM3 at the end of an RM1 zone?
Well, and the flume does and has historically shown it to be that type of structure.
Right,
So it's not a surprise item.
it's not,
It's not suddenly coming up. Historically, it does reflect that.
Again, understanding that our
which is a
2018
discrepancy
flume.
between the 2018 flume
Right.
and the zoning at that time.
The 2018 flume just reflects the actual use of the property.
Right,
Would we today
but it was,
approve?
at that point, it was being used as RM3, but zoned as RM1? Was there a
Zoned as
problem?
RM1, it showed that it was used at some point in the past. That's why I think that we have to separate that today and ask ourselves, would we approve a fourplex at the end of a street? Would we approve a zone change to put a fourplex in at the end of an RM1 street? In that particular street, given that narrowness, that like,
You know, we can't change the width of the street.
I get.
That's not going to be the case. It's going to be whatever it is.
Right,
But we're also not changing the length of the street, what we're doing here either.
Right.
So the parts of the city activity is a fact here. Traffic situations, there's probably, I'm sure there's other streets I've seen that have the same characteristic problem with traffic and size and structure. Can it handle 4 more homes or living? Can it handle the number of parking spaces and the number of vehicles?
30 years ago, there wouldn't have been 10 cars necessarily I mean, this is just, the society is different today than it was 30 years ago, right? So today, we have to figure on 8 cars. Back then, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't. We have to figure today, what would we do today if there was no structure on this?
And
Yeah.
no matter what the parking lot looks like that's being proposed here,
right.
we have guidelines on what the number of vehicles
Right.
expected to have. So the parking on the street becomes one of those balances. That's why we put it in the zone, in the guidelines, in the
Right,
ordinance.
I think to Tom's point, if this RM3 were at the edge of other RM3 or was at the edge of a different neighborhood, I mean, the RM2 is so far away from here, and the RM3 is buffered with more, RM1, I just think that it's incongruous to the rest of the neighborhood as RM3.
But it does exist on this parallel street to the north of it.
Not RM3, though.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
this is-
it's not
It's over
adjoining.
here.
It's not adjoining.
It's
buffered.
the
It
townhomes
is not
to the
adjoining,
north.
no. You're
It's
absolutely correct.
buffered by
It's
a row of
buffered by
single-family
that.
homes, yeah.
And it's
And
to-
those single-family
it's-
homes do not have, I mean, there's no access from one to the other.
Yeah, I don't
That's
see
right.
a transition
Correct.
is to be considered, in my mind. Thank you.
No, I'm right with you, Ken, because I was pointing it out again, that that's, in our case, it's the only brown colored one that you see around it, which is the color for the classification, even down here on Alta. It just doesn't have that many in that area. But it's a category, according to our paperwork history, is that that's what it was classified as.
But the question before us, and we've said it several times, let's narrow on, are we gonna make this an RM3?
It really is.
And
Yes.
it isn't what it's been, or
Correct.
what construction's been done on it, or what will be done on it, or How many people live there? That's somebody else's question.
And since there was a 12-month delay in activity here, the grandfather characteristic becomes one of those things that, just because of what it was,
Right, we stated that about 5 times.
exactly,
so-
just to state it again.
Can we move on to somebody making a motion one way or the other?
Well, I'm curious what the effect, if somebody's working on this property and has been for a while, they're doing that, what, on the assumption? that-
Yeah, on an assumption that we'll provide that cover for it.
They got a building permit for a renovation for a single-family residence for 1,700 square feet, so.
Hmm, okay.
So they requested a building permit for a single-family residence, 1,700 square feet.
Yep, I confirmed that with Rusty this morning.
Well, that changes everything.
But the building itself is about, I think, 4,000, is that what we said? 3,500. Yeah, 3,500, something like that, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I move to deny the request for RM3.
Thank you. Do we have a second to the motion?
Are there any conditions to put on this beyond just denying?
I think you have to give justification
Yeah.
that Henry will help with.
Let me offer a few, and you can
Yes,
pick and
please.
choose. That there's no contiguous zoning in RM3, that the proposed zoning is inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood, specifically in the scale that will be brought on by the zoning and the street width, and that there's no transition between zoning of this intensity and adjoining zones.
And I'd like to also add to that, that the actual building permit that was requested was not in compliance with the actual request that's being made before us today.
Yes, you can address that.
My client, Mr. Hawkins, is telling me that's not accurate as far as the building permit. We were here for zoning, so I don't have the building permit here, was not part of the purview of what I was considering for a zoning change issue. So I can't really speak to whether that's accurate or not. My client knows the building is not 1,700 square feet, so would not have sought a permit for a size that he knows
Yeah,
is not.
I think it was a renovation permit, not like a new occupancy permit. That's my understanding of it, so. So it's to renovate 1,700 square feet within that structure. That's my understanding.
So it sounds like calling it a permit application where they were pretending this is a 1,700-foot structure is not what occurred. Perhaps, sounds like they started.
Okay, so I withdraw that last statement. I still think it's relevant.
So you're deleting that from your,
So,
I'm deleting that
Your
from the
motion.
last motion.
so Henry, you're keeping good track. So you want to go over your points again?
Sure. The justifications for denial of the zone change is that it is not in fact in conformity with the comprehensive plan, in that it's inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood, specifically in the scale of what the new zoning will permit, and the street width will not accommodate it. There's no transition between zoning of this intensity and adjoining zoning, and there's no contiguous zoning in RM3.
The comprehensive plan, though, did show, not RM3, though. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's clear that the future land use map
Shows
can
that.
accord with that, but there's plenty of authority out there saying that's not the whole comp plan, and what I've tried to outline are those parts of it, but.
I wanted to point out the fact that they are two different topics. That's what,
Right, exactly.
that's
Yeah,
really what I'm trying to
We even
point
have
out.
language within our comp plan that states the flume is not the end-all be-all consideration for residential.
Correct.
zone
I,
changes.
again, I can expand on that for the group here, because that's a that's a big point to us. Okay.
So we have a motion on the floor. think you take amendments to the motion before you vote on the motion itself.
Were those
Need a second.
conditions?
My motion is as stated by Henry.
Okay,
And was there a second?
not yet. Okay, do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, it's seconded. Now, do we have any amendments to it we want to consider before we vote on the motion itself? Okay, then let's vote on the motion itself. We have a motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. This is a motion to deny. Okay, so it's denied. Now, for the benefit of the property owner, can we say what would probably be approved for this property by this commission? Since we denied the RM3, what would we probably approve?
We can only consider the application before us.
Before?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But we'd be looking for something consistent with the neighborhood. I think that's the sense that I'm picking up from the rest of the
I think we've got to
commission.
be careful, like Michaela said, we can only talk about a proposal that's before us.
Correct.
But I would recommend that somebody listen to the actual wording that we have.
I'm confident that council has tracked what has been implied by our discussion here today, if not stated outright.
All right, moving on then, we came out of the public hearing, went to, and we're back in the regular planning and zoning meeting. So moving ahead with the agenda, do we have an advisory committee report?
No, I didn't have them meet this month. I'll wait till after the holidays and then we'll reconvene to discuss the zoning text amendment.
Okay, do we have a separate budget committee report? No.
We don't. I can give a brief update that the auditor's coming in tomorrow to go through all the paperwork, so hopefully we will have a completed audit here in the next month or two. I apologize for the delay. I'm not sure what took so long, but it's slowly moving forward, so.
Okay, do we have personnel committee report?
No, we didn't meet.
Okay. Any other business to bring before the meeting?
Yep, we have the 2025 meeting schedule before you all that we need to get approved for the next year's meetings.
Have any discussion of that schedule?
I may not be around for the November 26th meeting.
Yeah, my guess is most people won't.
Yeah.
We'll probably do special called again in November and December. I know it's silly, but our bylaws dictate when these meetings are, so I can't, we've got to bring our schedule forward as such.
Oh.
But-
So we're required to show that those are the meeting dates? Is that-
Yep, and we'll change them in September, October. Typically, we just do one meeting in between November and December. We seem to have a lot of interest in applications for this November and December meeting. They didn't all end up coming through, but that's why we had
Right.
the two.
So we need to adopt it. Yeah, I'll make a motion, we adopt the commission meeting schedule for 2025.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Motion's unanimous. Do we have any other business?
I don't have anything.
Do we have any announcements?
I don't have anything.
Do we have a motion to adjourn? Do we have a second? All right, all in favor?